Hello. So recently I did a video where I looked at all different front ends for the AYN Thor. I gave a quick overview of a few different ones. I did some more in-depth videos for some of the ones I'd featured. At the end of that video, I very briefly mentioned IISU. Now IISU, for those aren't aware, one of the most, or perhaps the most anticipated front end for the AYN Thor, which unfortunately had a little bit of a tough start due to some controversy that kind of overshadowed the initial presentation and all got a little bit ugly. But like a phoenix rising from the ashes, IISU has risen again. So I did attempt to try out their initial alpha and I found it to be basically unusable. I wasn't able to log into retro achievements without errors. I wasn't able to get games to scrape data, so I was looking at a blank library of games. So I didn't think it was fair to do a proper overview in that state. The developer commented on that video and suggested that the new update could perhaps help bump it up the rankings because of the amount of work they've done on it. So I thought, you know what, mate, game on. So I signed up to their Ko-Fi. It's $5 a month, and that gives you access to the pre-releases. So I thought I'll try the pre-release and I'll have a little nosy at what these guys have been cooking up. And safe to say, he's a man of his word, or a lady of her word, their word. This is leagues ahead of where it was when I had a look at it a week or so ago. It's still in alpha. There are still some little bugs, and I noticed there's some quite amusing typos, but I can actually scrape games. It's usable. So we'll have a quick look here. I didn't want to do a proper overview or an in-depth guide, as it's still very early alpha, but for those of you eagerly anticipating the release of IISU, I thought this is the state it's at. I believe this version will go live to the public, I think, on Friday, which is about 5 days away at time of recording. So you can either join the Ko-Fi and get early access to any future updates, or you can be patient, which I suppose a lot of you are having your patience tested, waiting for those deliveries to arrive. So this is currently running the dark mode. So these icons here, these are created by someone, BioB the one, I think his name was. I probably completely butchered that pronunciation, so my apologies. So these are the dark mode versions of the icons. There's a few extra ones in here that aren't on the default one. We've got the Final Burn Neo core. There's also the Genesis. So as you can see, they don't have the top screen. So part of IISU is they're planning on releasing a kind of asset store where users can submit themes and asset packs and things like that. That's still under development. There are themes available on a Discord and icons, but you have to basically manually replace them in your settings. So I thought I'd have a play around and see what that's like at this stage. And it is very manual. Not something I recommend doing unless you're really confident, but the whole setup process is better. It has a proper onboarding process now, which is infinitely easier than it was in the last version. So you boot up IISU and it takes you through it step by step. It's all very, very easy to follow. So just having a quick look at this. Some of the things I'm not too keen on currently. So some of these icons, I don't think they're a very good immediate visual cue for what system they are. So for example, this one here, Game Boy, I would not have pieced that was Game Boy. The same we have Game Boy Advance here, and then Game Boy Color having the kind of two dashes. Obviously N64 is quite an obvious one. 3DS, yeah, okay. This is supposed to be Sega Genesis. So for this icon, I had to rename it to Mega Drive, which is quite weird because in the UK, it was known as the Mega Drive, but every other emulation software in front end I've used refers to it as its US name, which is the Genesis. So, but again, I don't really know what this is meant to be. I know it's Genesis. I don't know where this icon sits on the Genesis. And the same for, this is the NES. Don't really know what that's meant to be. The Super Nintendo, yeah, okay, you can see it's there in the logo. The Wii, it's not bad. I think just having the Wii logo probably would have been a better thing. But obviously, this is all part of the customization options they're planning on bringing with the full release or the subsequent alphas and betas. So, but in terms of usability, it's so much better. If I just show you the games list, so if I go through PS2, for example, so I love that they've actually fixed the retro achievements integration. So you can see here, should pick this up on camera, there's these little trophy icons where it's managed to match the hash to the retro achievements. So basically, each file, each ROM, each game has a unique identifier. That is how retro achievements works. It is able to match the memory values, and it can determine whether you've unlocked something, where you've beaten a challenge, that kind of thing. There is some minor criticisms I have with these. For example, some of them, the hashes are matched, but there are currently no achievements yet for them. So you'll see where it says here, you'll see 0 out of 0. So I think there could possibly be some sort of toggle in there, whereas if the achievement count is 0, don't show the icon. I say with absolutely zero knowledge of how the back end for IISU is built. But one thing I really love, and this is something I've yet to see on other handhelds. So I've been playing a lot of Gun recently, which is, again, great game, well worth checking out. So you can see I've got 92 out of 101 achievements, or achieve. So there's probably going to be some different text changes there to make it all visible. If I tap the X button, we can clearly get a look at the achievements that I have unlocked. So even though I don't know why it says here at the bottom 0 achievements published, I'm assuming, again, one of those things that still needs to be fixed. But you can see, and this is something that I, as someone who, you're probably sick of me saying by now, cannot stop mentioning retro achievements, because it's probably my favourite thing about the emulation scene, is just how simple it is. Because normally what I end up having to do is either on Chrome, on the Thor, or on my phone, I have to go to the retro achievements website, and I have to kind of look at the games I've got, and it's a little bit manual. Whereas being able to have both of those in the same, fully integrated, is just a quality of life change. So if there's any other developers of other front ends watching, then if you want to win me over, this is the way to go. Having said that, there is still a little bit of finicky things with IISU. However, it's, for those of you eagerly anticipating it, I'd say it's now in a state where I recommend signing up to that Ko-Fi, getting involved in the Discord, supporting the devs. There's I've ended up signing up for a few of the I've just spotted there the 0 out of 0. So Sims 2 apparently doesn't have achievements, even though it's matched the hash. So yeah, I've signed up to support a lot of the guys building these front ends. A lot of them, they're hobbyists, or they do it in their spare time, and they've been able to help popularize this hobby. So for the sake of a few quid a month to support those guys and help support that development, then I fully recommend it. And especially because a lot of them, you do get access to the additional themes or some pre-releases, and also a lot of them, the devs are very active on their Discord. So if there's certain suggestions you might have or certain bugs you come across, it's always good just to be able to help those guys out and basically help steer the development in a sense and make it the best it can be. I also love, it's got these screenshots here. So these screenshots are scraped. I believe I did this initial scrape off IGDB, because basically the way you scrape games on this, so we go to our consoles overview, we just hit our start. So we can, so this is one of the amusing typos I was talking about. We can scrap all console options, which to me sounds like it's going to remove them all. It's meant to be scrape, it's just a typo, it happens, but it did give me a little chuckle. It's my second favourite typo after the OLED protections tap to exist, which gave me something of an existential crisis, but I got over it. So you can scrape these, so you can configure these, I think by default IGDB, and I believe IGDB, you still have to use your client ID and client secret. There's full guides on how to set them up online. I'll be doing some videos to cover it if anyone has any issues with it. Screen Scraper, you just use your normal login. Steam Grid DB, you need your API key. The Games DB, there is a free version. If you want to use their API, you have to apply for it. So I've done that. I'm just waiting to hear back whether or not they approve the request. Who knows? But it's nice to have multiple different options. So if I say IGDB for now, you can auto select the best matches, or you can show the match list. kind of similar to Emulation Station's interactive mode, where it'll go through each one and say, here's what I found for this game, which one do you want? Although I found, for the most part, the auto-select has worked quite well. Some of the ROMs it hasn't found. It's mainly things like the arcade ones, because the naming convention in Final Burn Neo is quite different. So I've noticed that it's not just IISU. A lot of the front-end scrapers tend to go, I have no idea what this game is, so it does require a lot of mind. So you can see here, 64 Street. I don't know what that game is. Airbuster. And I need has been found. Andra done A of 2A, A of 2. Arm wrestling, I think that is. So yeah, so it's understandable why it can't quite find them, but these are the internal names that Final Burn Neo uses, and I think a lot of MAME uses either the same names or similar names, so it is something that can be a little bit confusing. But for the most part, it runs so much better. Being able to customize the consoles is easy enough. So we can go, for example, to our GB options. We can set a square icon. We can have a look at the achievement icon options. You can change the artwork alignment. Most of these I've just left on the default for now. You have your retro achievements options there, so you can generate the hashes if you add new games, for example. I do believe that it doesn't overwrite the hashes it's already found. I don't know if that's something they plan on doing. So if something's updated, for example, I know that they've just released multi-sets. For those who aren't aware, the normal retro achievements, you have your main set, and you also have subsets for extra challenges, things like that. Normally, to access those subsets, you had to get the ROM patch, and then patch the ROM, and again, it's this kind of extra process, and it's a little bit irritating. They've just launched multi-sets. It's only on It's only on select games at the moment, but in the long run, should be available over everything. So it's nice to be able to have those options available. Obviously, you can scrape them individually with your 4 options. We can edit the settings. We can sort out what console and emulator do we want. So I'm using the Gambate core from RetroArch. But if you say, oh, this is the Game Boy. So this matched via a smart mode. I pointed it in my ROMs folder and it found everything. If there's anything that you've set up and you think, oh my god, that's not the right console, you can just choose it in here. Your emulator. So if you have any of the standalone ones, which I don't use any of these, I just use RetroArch because it does the job perfectly well. You can also choose your RetroArch core if you prefer the Same Boy core or the Game Boy core, anything. You just choose that. And then, like with anything, you can just go in and then we'll boot straight into Adam's Family. Also, when you launch an app, this is one thing I really like. Some front ends have it, some of them don't, and I think this is a must-have feature. It asks you whether you want to launch in the top screen or bottom screen. Some apps, I say, always launch in the bottom screen or always launch in the top screen, but for games, sometimes I might want to mix it up. For example, if I've got YouTube or Plex up here and I'm watching a video, but I'm playing a Game Boy game, I don't mind the Game Boy game being 4:3 on the bottom screen. However, if I'm playing something like a PS2 game or I'm playing something through Game Hub or Game Native, I'd want to use the top screen and have maybe a video on the bottom screen. So having that option, but also being able to set it for ones where I know I'm like, so for example, I use Pixel Guide, which I'm going to cover in another video. Pixel Guide is basically a way to store walkthroughs and things like that. It links to game facts. So if you're playing like an RPG, you can have a walkthrough or a guide on the bottom screen here. Absolutely must-have app. So in that sense, I'd always want that on the bottom screen. I don't think there's any situation where I'd have that on the top screen because it doesn't really need that much real estate. So just having that option is a big win for EC. So we also have a nice achievements list here where we can just browse through everything, quite similar to you would on an Xbox or a PlayStation or Steam, which again, not a lot of front ends have, and you think it's one of those things which it's such a simple idea, but it's just that salt and pepper that just needs to be on top. The friends list isn't yet active, so it'll skip that icon. It'll take us to this. This is like an auto-populated folder, so we've got our apps, our games, and our emulators. I do wish, and I'm sure that in the later updates, these should have separate icons, because you only know which folder they are by looking at the top. So You can see I've got all my apps here. Again, I really like this nice app drawer as well. And one thing I like is if I boot into a game, you have it on the home screen. You've also got this little shortcut here. I was playing around with some PC streaming, which I'll be covering in another video. So being able to just quickly jump back into those apps is a great little feature. So all in all, to the developer, IISU, I believe his name is, or their name, fair play. Like you said that in this next update, it would start being closer to taking over ESDE Companion as my favourite. And it's still early days, but it's definitely worth keeping an eye on. So I'm going to keep this installed for the foreseeable and have a play around with it. Like I said, sign up to their Ko-Fi, get involved in the Discord, help those guys out. If any of you have any skills in creating asset packs, throw your hat in the ring. It's a great community. For a lot of people, this is going to be a brand new hobby. So I really think it's well worth getting involved. So I'll be covering IISU anytime there's a major update. I just wanted to kind of give this a proper overview, seeing as I didn't really get a chance to in my initial overview video. And I know this is the one where loads of people saw that presentation and then they saw the AYN Thor, and I imagine there's a solid percentage of people who bought the AYN Thor based off what they'd seen on that IISU presentation. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a like or a subscribe. I'm going to be posting a lot more videos around the AYN Thor. I've also received my AYN Odin 3. So once I've kind of got the bulk of the setup stuff out of the way for the Thor, I'll be covering the Odin 3 as well. I'm not intending on covering any more devices other than that. I want to focus on mainly games and customization, things like that. But these devices are, in my opinion, second to none in the emulated handheld space. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.